So if you could please identify yourself. I'm going to take 2 questions at a time. Everybody just 1 question only. And I'll start with Dina.
Hi, thanks very much. My name is Dina Girgis. I'm an Egyptian-American fellow at Washington Institute. My question is to Josh. Your talk seemed to imply that if peace were achieved tomorrow, Syria would miraculously become a democracy. I can tell you as an Egyptian that Egypt has had a peace treaty with Israel for decades now, and that, as a matter of fact, political repression intensified, and that the Egyptian regime sort of manipulated the issue of Israel to justify the existence of its very brutal state security apparatus, and in a very illogical, irrational way was telling people, we have to torture you because Israel exists and is bad. I think what the Egyptian revolution demonstrated was that it turned all of that upside down, basically. The Egyptian people said, we're no longer buying into this manipulation. The 2 issues are distinct. Peace is distinct from our desire for internal political reform. So I just like you to comment on that, because you continue to harp on the idea that the main issue for Syria is peace and is Israel, and that that is really what's stopping internal progress.
Let's take one other question. Question here in this room? No? All right. Okay. Actually, I'll let Josh go ahead and answer this, and we'll take the next.
I didn't make any connection. I don't think it will lead to democracy. I don't think there is any connection between the two, and that I think it's the most important foreign policy issue, that it's organized serious foreign policy around this question. I do think that's important. But as for democracy, perhaps it'll encourage democracy if there is peace, because sanctions will be lifted, there'll be more development in Syria, and you'll get a bigger middle class. If you don't have peace and you have sanctions, you're going to get a poorer Syria and a poorer Iran, which is going to retard, I think, peace. And, America should be on the side of helping the third world to grow, not to sanctioning them and trying to starve them. I think it's an un-American policy in the long run, and it's not going to help democracy either. I think that peace will promote greater flourishing of the whole region. But will it create democracy? Syria's got internal problems that have that keep it from being democratic, that are not related. So I wouldn't argue that peace is going to be the solution to Syria's domestic problems. I don't think that should be the reason we're doing it.
Hi, my name is Andrew Engel. I'm a research assistant at the Washington Institute. And you said that Syria was gloating on the television the end of the Camp David regime. But on the other hand, you say that you want them to engage in a peace process with Israel, which to me seems to be the continuation of the Camp David regime. Are there any steps that Syria and Israel could take, small steps beyond rhetoric, to push this along?
Another question? By the way, people in the overflow room, we have question cards that you can fill out and send in. Sorry to put you through that. So that's a question for Josh. I'd like to ask Andrew about how the U.S. should be supporting the Syrian opposition. You talked about that. What material aid can we lend? How can one realistically do that in the future? Josh, do you want to?
Yes, I think Syria does want to continue, in a sense, the Camp David regime. And that's exactly what it's asking for, is to be part of the Camp David regime. It wanted to get back in 1973. It wanted to get back the Golan the way Egypt got back the Sinai. And that's what Syria's been asking for ever since. So in a sense, it does want. And it's upset with the Camp David regime because Syria was dealt out and the Palestinians were dealt out. And the Egyptians, threw them under the bus, if you will. They don't want to be under the bus. They want to be where the Egyptians are. So I don't think the Egyptians are going to give up the Camp David regime. It's good for Egypt. And I think the Syrians want to be part of the Camp David regime. And if you wanted to define it that way with a global peace, then it's good. If it's just peace for the Egyptians so that Israel doesn't have to give back land to the Palestinians and the Syrians, then it's bad. And that's what I think the Syrians objected to, is that they didn't get their land, the Palestinians didn't get their land, that this should be a comprehensive border arrangement where international law is applied.
concerning support for the Syrian opposition. And I guess in here, I think about, when I think of the opposition, I also think about civil society activists and so on. It has been a tricky issue because I remember when I was in Syria and the word came down that any kind of American money was radioactive. This was during the Bush administration, and that not only affected the Bush administration's attempt to reach out to the Syrian opposition, but also any other kind of American activities in the country. It's very difficult. I think that probably the best way is to try and get. I recently watched a documentary on Al Jazeera, which was very interesting, that talked about how some of the best practices of the activists and ultimately demonstrators were transferred from former Yugoslavia, Serbia, to the Tunisians, and then they were also transferred at the same time to the Egyptians, and how sort of general principles could be used against an authoritarian, despotic regime in order to either get it to change or eventually to bring it down. I found that extremely interesting in that it seemed like a lot of that was happening without much government involvement. I don't know who was flying who where and all of these things, but I would think that given the divisions inside the Syrian opposition, it would be fruitful to get them together to talk about some of these best practices, but also, just as I said before, how do you work together? How do you not be the crabs in the basket that pull each other down all the time? When you have a conversation, and this is, by the way, not just with Syrian opposition, but is with opposition in a lot of countries, they spend more time slagging each other off than they do the despotic regime that they all hate. Well, in order to move in that direction, there needs to be more emphasis placed. And I would think that Western countries, along with other Arab countries in the region which have made transitions or in the process of making transitions, could participate in that. And I think that would be a very sensible early step. And beyond there, I would leave it up to the NGOs and the civil society activists who know these issues best.
Melissa Maley with Sino Resources. Thank you for the talk. I'm very interested in the framing here on how the democracy movement's being viewed. Certainly, Josh, from your comments, your frame of reference, or you're saying for the Syrians, is that this is seen through a foreign policy lens, and its democracy will sharpen, clarify public opinion against Israel. However, I was very interested also in the commentary on corruption, because certainly in the Egyptian case, in the Tunisian case, good governance and corruption were really fundamental issues that drove this groundswell. And so, I guess my question would be: it may be true that Assad would prefer an optic of a foreign policy optic of Israel, but what about the Syrian people? What is going to be their gut reaction in looking at these developments? Is it going to be that foreign policy optic, or would it be their pocketbooks?